Welcome to Sarat Samvad, an initiative from Border Studies in South Asia. Now, our guest for today on our Emerging Scholar series is Dr. Vaishali Raghuvanshi. Now, Dr. Vaishali Raghuvanshi is an assistant professor in Department of Political Science in Banaras Hindu University, located in India. She was also a former assistant professor of international relations at Christ University, located in Bangalore, in India. Now, Dr. Vishali has published several articles. However, the focus for this discussion is Dr. Vishali's co-authored article titled Portraying the Other in Textbooks and Movies, The Mental Borders and Its Implications on India-Pakistan Relations. This article was published in Journal of Borderland Studies, and the link to this article is given in the description. Now, our first question for Dr. Vishali is, in context of your paper, how would you define and theorize mental borders in South Asia?
Thank you so much, Ankur, for the question. And also, deep regards to everyone associated with this initiative, Samvad, because we know the value of the conversation, especially in South Asia, when we hail from South Asia and when we study South Asia. And I'm so happy to accept the invitation and also to be part of this journey that is actually an endeavor to bring all the scholars and all the practitioners together to one platform and make it available for rest of the people of South Asia to have a sense of integration and to have a sense of South Asianism. So first of all, let me tell you something about this paper, and then I'll come back to the point of theorization. The first thing is that this paper is a co-authored paper, and this paper I have co-authored with my supervisor, Dr. Dhananjay Tripathi. And it is actually him who has motivated to think about the borders. And then when I started reading, I thought of understanding that I actually inclined towards mixing the idea of borders with the visual impact, which I have done as part of my PhD thesis. And in that, I figured out that there is a lot of scope to understand visual narratives when it comes to understanding the relevance of borders in South Asia. So as we know that South Asia is one of the least integrated region of the world, and which implies that it has been a region with the different and difficult borders and boundaries. And this itself makes it very interesting to delve into the study of this kind of border. And it is like we can also understand that these borders and boundaries have actually defined much of the regional politics of South Asia. And this has not been the sort of border which we are habituated to study, but it is actually so many factors which have been playing a vital role to define and to understand these borders and boundaries. And these factors are ranging from the factors which are tangible to the intangible factors. And we also know that along with the hard state borders, there are other socio-political boundaries. And to give you example, these are religious divides, caste divisions, oppressive patriarchal social orders, and poverty, and a range of other issues which are serving as the boundaries in this particular region. So in South Asia, for an individual, it is actually the daily encounter with the hard borders of the state and the boundaries of the society. And in a way, borders and boundaries are part of normal life in South Asians, and there are a resistance to any transformation in that system, also in the present and also in the past, from either the top or from the bottom side. So when we look into the understanding of borders and boundaries, we know that it has become actually very difficult for the common people to go beyond the certain definition of the boundaries which we have today, which is defined by the parameters of social freedom, societal freedoms, to quote. And if we look at from the perspective of regionalism and societal development, these borders and boundaries have been a matter of perennial concern in South Asia. It has not washed away from the discussion in South Asia. It has been part of it, and it is going to be part of it for a good time. Now, when we come to the theorization of mental border, we must understand that before even theorizing the mental border, we must understand the common definitions given by so many people, so many scholars. And if I have to quote, I'll quote Professor David Newman, who has said that all borders share a common function to the extent that they include some and exclude many others. And he has also stated that by creating otherness, we create separate identities through the maintenance of the border. Now, this very particular definition states a kind of hint towards the idea of a soft border and the idea of the message, the perception which borders and boundaries have to cater to the audience, and also the construct which comes through this kind of understanding of the border. And the interesting fact here to understand is actually the otherness which he has stated. With this otherness, we get the perception of us versus them. We will deconstruct this further. Now here it gives a scope and also an understanding to invest oneself into the mental borders, because the idea of creating the other cannot be done separately by just understanding the role of hard borders in South Asia. But then when you try to understand the mental borders, the understandings have been limited to the idea of different regions, other regions, which is European, to quote, which is also the other Asian countries, where you will see how the mental borders have played a role in terms of giving it a porous identity. And then you will have, if you put the same into the South Asian perspective, you will see that the mental borders are the ones which is staying with the people, and it is about the boundary of human existence, which has the consciousness of its identity, and then it is actually initiating the process of, it is actually initiating the mental process and pattern which is leading to the idea of which is leading to the segmenting, or I would say cementing the idea of physical borders. What has been the basic understanding out of the theorization which we have in the paper is that border is not a natural phenomena. It is actually a construct which is basically a contribution of powerful political actors, which is to maintain control over the people. And when you see the very rationale of mental borders and the understanding and the construct of mental borders, you will be able to understand that how it is to create a division between create a division of political, economic, social, and how it has served between humans and border, though it is border, though the border is immaterial and such divisions are blurred, but it actually provides a sort of legitimacy to the borders in terms of securitization, because it has to, ultimately the state has to sustain the borders with the help of the process of legitimization. And it is actually the border which we see, it is not just the creation of a space or the creation of the boundary, but it is also to find the pleasure and ease in terms of sustaining those divides, like the political, economic, and societal divides. So we can say that when it comes to South Asia, there is a preference for securitized borders, and South Asian states have in particularly have a preference for securitized borders, and they have consciously used the methods to to sustain these securitized borders. And there have been unquestioned support of the people to the state for such a security-centric approach. And when you see when you dig deeper into it, you will understand that this is only possible by the creation of the mental border, which is also the outcome of the perception construct. And then the sustenance of this kind of border is actually the product of certain methods which states uses. I'll probably quote the Paula Banerjee, who states that in South Asia, bilateral relations do not construct the border. Rather it is the borders which shapes the relation. And it is quite evident when we talk about the countries who are in conflicting bilateral ties with each other. And lastly, I would like to mention the point that basically the hard borders have been the product of the dilemma of colonization, right? And then we see the dilemma of British in India. They had the strategy to keep a check on the expansionist ambition of other countries, and the borders were basically to safeguard the colonial interest in India. And when they left the region, we know that post-colonial states, primarily we know India, Pakistan, were hesitant to make it soft and porous border in South Asia, despite the fact that that these borders were basically, I mean, it was easy to dilute the hard border because of the shared culture, historical and social linkages between states. But still, like I mentioned in my previous argument, that it was actually the governments which were interested in keeping such kind of borders, and then uh, the the kind of political benefit they sought from the borders, and then the idea of the way it has been constructed in the minds of people. There have been a lot of official policies to convince the common people. So yeah, this is what is for your first question, Ankur.
Now, thank you for that answer, Dr. Vaishali. Now, you have also analyzed the mental borders between India and Pakistan through cinema of both countries, specifically two Indian movies, namely LoC Kargil and Sarfarosh, and two Pakistani movies, namely Ramchand Pakistani and Waar. Can you please share with us your findings? And secondly, on how cinema, which is primarily a citizen-driven aesthetic medium, differ from a state-sponsored official textbooks?
Thank you. It is quite an interesting question, Ankur. Like it pins down all the understanding which I have of cinema and how I tried to include cinema and mental borders together. So there are basically various epistemological tools and processes which can be related to the production of knowledge, idea, and perception. And to me, images are an important medium because it actually has the potential to highlight social and political processes in a very interesting manner. And it catches your attention as you know that text and verbal sources provides the meaning to the phenomena, and they are not the only tools for providing meaning, but then images are also important tool for communication and for providing meanings. And we know that the importance of visual media uh, has increased in the current age. But this has been realized as an aesthetic turn in the discipline of IR in the decade of 1980s for the first time. And then when after some time, that was the first wave. And after some time, there was a second wave, which was in, if I'm not wrong, which was with the onset of end of Cold War. And there, the reliance on the tools of the scholars have relied mostly on the tools such as cinema, theater, music, and arts. And that has opened the newer ways to analyze the global political affair. So it is not today, in light of the pandemic, we are realizing the value of the images and then the value of such kind of communication. But then it was also, when we talk about the IR per se, it has been in the discipline and it has been realized in two different ways. So when I was studying this, it caught my attention that how a very serious political affair has been studied by so many scholars by using paintings, by using cinematic narratives. So that is when I realized that even cinema can be used in terms of understanding the South Asian affairs. And then, as I was speaking about the construct of mental borders in the previous question, when we were talking about the conceptualization of the mental border in South Asia, we were talking about, as in, it is quite important to understand that it is not just the state which is involved in the process of borders and boundaries creation. Rather, it is also the people who are involved in terms of construction and deconstruction of such kind of uh, territorial borders. Because the entire conceptualization signals to go towards the understanding that it is the mental border which is keeping the sustenance of the territorial border, and it is actually the territorial border which is keeping the sustenance of the mental border. And interestingly, in South Asia, it is actually the mental border which is at play. And when we talk about the mental borders, the role of perception is quite heavy to understand. And whenever we talk about perception, like I have this habit of linking so many things together, we know that the perception is actually a construct of popular consciousness. And then there we come to understand the role of cinema. So, I mean, quite a few studies I have taken into consideration before even starting the study on mental border, which has given me a kind of a kind of motivation to dwell to dig deeper into the idea of visual representation. So when we talk about the mental borders, these factors have contributed to my understanding and my motivation. And then I also realized that border studies is one of the potential subject for IR, which the role of cinema. Cinematic representations have actually played a definitive role in constructing popular imagination regarding the issue of identity, refugee crisis, and notion of cultural and psychic frontiers. And it is the effect of this collective imagination which actually engages the narratives and the powerful image that cinema is capable of presenting to the viewers actually helps to understand the process of how it has been, how the perception is being constructed, and then how it is being deconstructed. Like you have mentioned in your question also, the first film which I took was the LoC Kargil. And we know that this movie has been released in 2003, and it is actually a fictionalized account of the Kargil war between India and Pakistan. And as the name suggests, it is a depiction of the India-Pakistan border in Kashmir. And the thematic development and the dialogue in the movie has represented border not only as highly securitized and non-porous, but also as a dividing line, which needs to be protected from any kind of infiltration. And in turn it has in turn provided the catalytic effect to the mental image of a border that is rigid and hostile. And this particular depiction has been the manifestation of a dialogue, which is in the beginning of the movie. If you have seen the movie, or when you will see the movie, you will find that there is a plot where it is in the beginning of the movie itself. There is a plot where the army commander gives order to one of his lieutenant to conduct a recce for the lost petrol. And he's stating there that the information is received that the certain rats have crossed the LoC. We will trample those rats and push them to the other side of the LoC. And this has been the reply of the lieutenant. And these dialogues, which are made with regard to the physical borders, are also capable of constructing the mental borders by introducing the concept of the othering, and by also injecting the idea of the process of othering of the neighboring country. And such powerful dialogues have been mixed by the fineness of the actors who are actually drawing up an image of the hostility that is lying across the border. And this has also created the impression that people beyond the borders are significant others. So with the dialogue, you will see that such important construct has been actually put forth with the kind of with this plot which is there in the film. And this imagination of physical border and military strategy has actually led to the development of a mental border that is that has been universalized, and this has persisted even the peace times. Now, next movie which I took was Sarfarosh, and it focuses on Pakistan as an enemy state, but it also talks about the psychological outcomes of the partition. So there, the protagonist Ajay Singh Rathore, he's a police officer and is on a trial of the terrorists who are responsible for attack on civilians in south of India. And as he's conducting his investigation, he has traces the weapons which has come from Pakistan. And their agent in India is a singer, Gulfam Hassan. And Gulfam Hassan is actually a manifestation of the person who has gone through the trauma of dislocation experienced by the Indian Muslims who were forced to go to Pakistan after partition. And we will see that as the movie starts, a Pakistani army officer reports to his general about gun violence in India, executed by weapons sent from Pakistan. And the officer states that, look at this, India's newspaper. They are full of news about our success. So this is a war, and the general has further stated in response to that statement that this is a war, and we have to win this war at any cost. And the memories of partition, we can see that are being revisited when Gulfam Hassan, who is an agent of Pakistan in India, a singer, states that we were forced out of our homes for no reasons. And this kind of depictions have actually showcased the psychological pains related with the bilateral relations between the countries. And thus it creates imagery of mental border. Now, when we look into the depiction which comes, the dialogical depiction which comes from the Pakistani movie industry, which is Lollywood, we have two important portrayals. The first is of Ramchand Pakistani, which was released in 2008 and which is set around the India-Pakistan border. So this story has been about the friction time between these two countries, and this actually represents a story of a father named Shankar and the son named Ramchand. So this particular family is a Hindu Dalit, and they live in Pakistan. They actually somehow they cross the border, and they're caught by security forces on the Indian side. And even the kid has not been spared by the security forces, and they have actually suspected them of, they have actually a suspicion of that kid being a spy. And then they are kept in jail in Bhuj, and the without even registering them as a prisoner. So in this movie, you will see that the particular narrative of creating the other is so powerful that even the humanity has actually subsided when we talk about the borders and when we talk about the mental construct about, or the popular construct about the mental border. Now, in the end of this movie, as we see that the plot moves from the tension between India Pakistan to the improvement between the relationship, Ramchand and his father were released, and they were sent to Pakistan via Wagah border. And the dialogues in this movie have shown the nature of India-Pakistan relation, which actually indicates the existence of mental border. So there is one example which I would like to bring, that as Ramchand has been caught by BSF, the suspicion and mistrust of the officer is so evident that he finds a sin shot with the boy and says that he has brought a weapon with him to free Kashmir. And do take this into reference that he's talking about a small boy who is a Hindu Dalit and who has somehow by mistake crossed the border with his father. And the so basically when this kind of references you see in the movie, you know that it is actually along with the territorial border, these dialogues are reinforcing the idea of mental borders. And we see that these two are interlinked with each other. And the last movie which you have mentioned is War, which was released in 2013. And this has been the blockbuster Pakistani movie which had the patriotic tone, and it has presented Indian as an enemy. This movie is actually based on the terrorist attack on Pakistani soil, which is planned with the help coming from across the border. And this movie has actually shown the presence of a raw operative named Lakshmi in Pakistan, who is working on the destabilizing Pakistan by planning the biggest attack on the country. And this attack is ultimately thwarted by Pakistani security agencies, and Indian agent is killed by her own agency as punishment. Now, this movie has also presented the issue of tribal community of northern Pakistan who are shown up in arms against Pakistani government and receiving help from India. Now, this movie has done a job of building mental borders by portraying India as a country that is only interested in destroying Pakistan. In one of the sequences, the Indian spy and the terrorist are shown to be passionately enjoying the moment of a fatal attack on the police academy in Pakistan. The India spy informs her boss that of the success of the attack, and she says that turn on the TV and all you see is a chaos. To which the boss has replied that you have kept my confidence. I'm proud of you. And this depiction has actually built a mental border by sending a message that destruction in Pakistan is a subject of amusement in India, and Indian agencies take pride in this. So like this, there are a lot of examples in each and every movie I have quoted here, which you have asked for. And we can see that how these movies have played a role where we can understand a particular narrative about the construct of a mental border. Now, the difference between movies and textbook, we know that it is naive to think of the school curriculum as a neutral knowledge. Rather, what counts as a legitimate knowledge is a result of complex power relation, and it is actually a struggle among identifiable class, race, gender, and religious groups. So when we talk about textbooks, we know that they're directly state sponsored. And when we talk about cinema, we know may or may not have the stand of a state, because there are certain ways in which the state intervenes in cinema, but we claim that cinema is actually an independent industry, which is true sometimes, which is not true sometimes. Now, textbooks have set audience. They are being read in the formative stage, and they are also being considered as the legitimate source of knowledge, which it is. But on the other hand, cinema is actually about the public viewership. It is also about the commercial appeal, and it is mostly used for the entertainment purpose. So this is it, Ankur.
Now, thank you for that informative and very interesting answer. Now, our last question for you is, why did you choose to study borders of South Asia? And what are the challenges that you faced while studying such borders?
Thank you, Ankur. It is actually the question related to the motivation, which the element of motivation which are derived in South Asian studies and also in the border studies of South Asia. It is actually for the first time when I was doing a very basic reading on South Asia, and then we had to study about ASEAN and European region. I had a discussion with my friends about the borders in these regions, and then I tried to understand it further. And then after a few years, I got this opportunity to work with our professor, Dr. Vaishali, and he was already working on borderlands and border studies in South Asia. So when we had a discussion, then also we discussed a couple of points like how it is possible for the region like Europe and it is not possible for the region like South Asia. And I exactly remember the point he mentioned, which he has also cited, which he has also written in the paper, that South Asia is a region which is more globalized than regionalized, and it is more connected to the world economy than in the South Asian economy itself. And there I tried to kind of understand that it is actually because of the because of certain factors, because of which it is more globalized. And also uh, there we identified the role of India as a country, India as one of the key player in the global political economy, which is also an important player when it comes to the discussion on South Asian political economy. So there is also a mention about the aspect that South Asia has a complex history, where we have seen. So this is the aspect of, this is the factor about the political economy. But when you go into the history of the region, you will see that this history is marked by the complex history, where we have these two dominant players, India and Pakistan, which were one in the past. These factors have interestingly have actually worked the other way around. And these factors have played a vital role to have a sustenance of the mental borders. So these were the things which attracted my attention. And then I thought it will be very interesting to understand the perception which is at play here in South Asia. And then I thought that why not to start with India Pakistan itself, when we have to talk about the conflicting history, the conflicting past, and how this has been a part of historical, how this has been the outcome of historical construct rather than, I mean, so why not to understand the factors involved there. And then the another interesting thing about this study was that it is not about just the tangible perceptions, rather it is also about the intangible perceptions. So when I say tangible perceptions, I'm talking about the strict policy regimes, I'm talking about the barbed wiring which we see, the the wiring and the fencing which we see across the borders. But it is also about the fencing in terms of the popular imagination which we see through various narratives. And how the third aspect, which was that bringing cinema into this study, and then trying to understand that how cinema will be of vital of will be of importance here to understand this particular construct. So this was the entire rationale behind picking up the study of borders in South Asia. When we talk about the challenges, the very first challenge which I had in terms of bringing cinema and mental border together was actually the difficulty in terms of data collection. As we know that when we talk about Bollywood and Lollywood, Bollywood in India is actually an industry which is quite independent, and which also produces the number of movies. If you will look into the number of movies Bollywood produces as compared to Lollywood, is actually the bar when you'll compare and when you will see the production, the bar of that production will go very high for the Bollywood movies as compared to the Lollywood. So it was difficult to identify movies from Lollywood, Pakistani movie industry. And it was little difficult to use cinema as an epistemological tool, because we know it is created for the entertainment purpose. And study of cinema is based on the method of discourse analysis, which is difficult to apply, because there are several factors which may prove your study to be like which may hinder the part of your study. And then because we know that there is a commercial appeal to the cinema, and then there are a lot of other factors. But then there to my rescue, I figured out the triangular model which I'm talking about. And that model has actually been the inspiration from the works done by Cynthia Weber, Nixon and Newman. And in India, like I was mentioning to you a text which talks about the performance of the drill at the Wagha border. And that book was actually the performance of nationalism in basically the performance of nationalism. And it was written by G. Menon, can be a useful source when we try to understand the epistemology of IR. So these factors contributed to the contributed as a constant source of motivation, and then that's how I figured out that even the discourse analysis can be not easier. It is difficult to do, but still, even if we try to understand the narratives and if we bring in those ideas to understand such kind of constructs, it is actually informative, and it is a kind of newer ways to understand the existing processes. And there was also a challenge to quantify the data, as in I have done the semi-structured interviews and also the survey method for the research which I did earlier. For this paper, it was completely qualitative, but it is a challenge for anybody who is studying the cinema, who's trying to take cinema as a medium to understand international relations. So yeah, this has been my bit on study of borders, South Asia, borders in South Asia, and then by taking cinema as a source to understand such borders. Thank you.
Now, thank you, Dr. Vaishali, for this wonderful session. And one thing that I want the audience to know is that apart from being an excellent scholar, Dr. Vaishali has also been my senior during our PhD program, and she has been extremely helpful to all of those that have come after her. Now, Dr. Vaishali, thank you for giving us this time. And I believe that anyone who has interest in popular culture of India and Pakistan would definitely learn a lot from watching this interaction.
Thank you, Ankur. Thank you for saying such kind words. Thank you so much.